All right. Oh my gosh. Welcome, folks. We've got a lot of folks joining us today. So excited to have you all back with us for our second season of Sustainable in the City. My name is Jen Harmon. I am the Zero Waste Program Manager at Metro Nashville Waste Services, and I am here with my partner, with my co-host with the mostest, Christina Langoni from Urban Green Lab. So today you are joining us for Sustainable in the City. This is where we talk all things sustainability and all things waste reduction here in Nashville and how you can get involved to live a less wasteful life, to be more sustainable in your everyday life, and find out what the city is doing as well in all of those regards. So welcome to our show today. We've got a lot of folks joining us, so we're gonna banter a little bit to let people get in. Make sure everybody's ready to go before we get started. But today, our very special guest is Dr. Kendra Abkowitz. She is the Chief Sustainability and Resilience Officer with Metro Nashville, with the Mayor's Office. So really excited to have her talk about how she's helping make Nashville a top spot for sustainability. So as always, Sustainable in the City is a partnership between us and Urban Green Lab. And I don't know about you, Christina, but I'm happy to be back. This is exciting.
I am very happy to be back. I mean, we got 81 so far on the participants. We got so many people who registered. We are ready to chit chat with folks. We are ready to talk to Dr. Abkowitz. This is going to be wonderful. I'm so excited. It's 2022. We are ready. We are bringing sustainability right back to the forefront of our minds, and it's going to be super exciting. And so we want to ask folks in the chat, did you make any sustainability minded resolutions this year? Let's hear about them. Let us know. And that's a good way for you to test out if you know how to use the chat. So hopefully you can see our screen where it says join us in the chat. We want to set the chat to everyone. So you should see there right above where it says type message here. It should say everyone. So not host and panelists, go to everyone so everyone can see it and we can see what's going on. Oh, look at that. Christopher's already coming in. He's going to buy an EV. Goodness gracious, that is a big one to start with. We can go smaller too. We can go bigger if we need to. Suzanne is starting composting with Compost Nashville. Nice. Love it, love it. So good. Keep them coming in. We want to hear about your sustainability-minded resolutions. If you didn't make one, that's fine too. Don't worry about it. Maybe you'll learn one today that you'll want to take on. So basically, we want to make sure that you know how to use the chat because that is how you are going to ask your questions and make comments and kind of be able to interact with us today. So we want to make sure that you set that to everyone so everyone can see it. And then I will be going through it to make sure that I grab all of your questions so that at the end, we can make sure that we get those over to Kendra and she can answer those as best as she can. And then we will send any resources and things that have been shared in the chat as well. So that chat is going to be your best friend today. And I think that is all we have to talk about right now. But if you missed any shows from last year, or if you want to go back and take a look at this episode's show, then you can go right to Urban Green Lab's YouTube page, and we have a whole playlist of all the 23 previous episodes, and then we will keep adding those every single time that we have an episode. So you'll never have to worry about missing one, and you can even register for our next episode. And so we will get that link in there as well before the end of this episode. And you can take a look at any of those emails that I also send after the episodes, which will always have the next episode to register for. So we got you covered. And we're good.
Right. So that means we're ready to get started. We're ready to get our guest going. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You've seen this long enough. You've got the information you need. All right, and so let's go ahead and get into our talk. So as I said before, I'm super excited to have Dr. Kendra Abkowitz with us today, the Chief Sustainability and Resilience Officer with Metro Nashville Government. So welcome, Kendra. And yes, welcome. Hello, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me, Jen and Christina. I'm so excited to be here today and to get to be on Sustainable in the City. I've loved following the work you guys do for quite some time, and so it's really great to actually be a guest now. So
yes, well, we love to have you. So excited to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you find yourself working in sustainable policy for the state? And then now for Nashville, you're in this new role. So what has your journey looked like to get here?
Yeah. It's like most of us, it's been a little bit of a winding path and nonlinear, and doesn't resemble at all what I thought I'd be doing now. So I'll tell you a little bit about me, and then again touch on kind of how I got to where I am today. So I have actually had the benefit of being a Nashvillian since 1988. So while I wasn't born here, my family moved here when I was about 2.5. And so what's really neat about that is that I've been able to see Nashville grow and change quite a bit over 30 plus years. And it's also kind of provided me the benefit of interacting with various different groups and perspectives across the community. So, you know, having gone to elementary school, high school here, I ended up doing my undergrad and going to grad school at Vanderbilt. And then more recently, you know, as I've become kind of a working professional and adult, I've been able to interact with sort of newer transplants to the city. And so I think that's a really unique perspective that you know, I can bring to this position. I'm also kind of a true lover of learning, and have at times joked with folks that if I could go to school for the rest of my life, I would. So I kind of have a little bit of a diverse academic background, or formal academic background, in sociology, economics, environmental policy, as well as management and kind of business topics. And so one of the things that I really like about sustainability and resilience work is that it's highly interdisciplinary and folds all of those things together. I've always loved the outdoors and the environment, and had appreciation for those things and sort of how they benefit communities and us as individuals. But honestly, I never envisioned that I would have a career that was this focused on environmental work. I kind of landed in it. If you asked me in high school what I wanted to do, I wanted to go to medical school and be a doctor. And then when I was in college, I wanted to teach at the college level and be a professor. And so neither of those things have happened yet. I guess I still have time, but that's not necessarily where I am today. And so my first professional exposure to sustainability was actually an internship that I had with a unit called Vanderbilt Environmental Health and Safety. And they were sort of an operationally focused unit that worked both with the university and also the medical center at the time on a variety of different environmental health topics. But one of the specific offices within that group was one focused on sustainability and environmental management. And so that was kind of a great learning experience for me, and that I got to interact with a lot of folks focusing on operations and kind of maintenance of spaces, but then also do work on some of the softer skills associated with sustainability work and figuring out how to communicate and compel behavior change with faculty, staff, students, and even campus visitors. So I worked in that space and was able to get a full-time position there for about 4 years. And then after that, transitioned into a role in environmental policy and planning with the state of Tennessee, specifically our Department of Environment and Conservation. And I was able to do environmental policy, strategic planning work for sort of my first 2 or 3 years there, and then had the great opportunity to also add into kind of my portfolio of work some of our sustainability programs at the state level. And then most recently, I transitioned obviously into this role working on sustainability and resilience with the city of Nashville. So it's been really great working at the local level and feeling like I have a more direct impact on communities through the work that I'm doing. And so that's been, I think, something that's super gratifying about my role now. And then outside of work, I right now spend a lot of time with my family. I have 3 young kiddos. So a daughter, Josephine, who's 5. And then twin boys, James and Luke, who are 2, a dog named Merle. And then we're going to be adding another individual, another baby girl to our cohort next month. So that's
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I didn't know that.
You.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Also, Merle is just a fabulous name for a dog.
Yes, Merle Haggard.
I like to collect dog
names.
It's so good. Well, what an incredible, I just love hearing the stories of people and how they find their way to sustainability, because it's often not a direct path. There's a lot of folks that are now, it's more, I think, prevalent now in academic to get into a sustainability, focused program, but so many people I meet, they were doing something else and then managed to end up finding their way to sustainability. So just an incredible background on how you got here. So now that you are here, now that you're with Nashville, what does it actually mean to be the Chief Sustainability and Resilience Officer for Nashville?
So it means a lot of different things, and I'll kind of be the first to say that, there have been prior iterations of myself in this role. And so I'll tell you a little bit about sort of how I'm approaching my role today. And in a lot of circumstances, it's really similar to how previous positions like this have functioned for the city of Nashville. And then hopefully it's also a little bit different in some other ways as well. And really, one of the things that I really love about my job is that I get to work both across Metro departments and then with the community. So kind of from that Metro departmental perspective, I would be remiss if I didn't say that we have a lot of really incredible sustainability and resilience work that's ongoing in our departments. I don't think we talk about it enough, and we don't give ourselves enough credit. And so one of the things that I try to do in my role is really to actually support and build up their programs and services that are provided to the public. And then there's also that operational aspect, so helping to work with them to reduce environmental impacts associated with their operations. And so kind of digging a little bit deeper into what that looks like, I find myself spending a lot of time advocating for and really amplifying departmental environmental sustainability and resilience projects. So one example of one that we're working on, Jen, with the Zero Waste team is obviously, being a partner with you all in terms of thinking about what implementation of construction and demolition recycling policy looks like. And then when it comes time to rolling that out and going through public participation and notifying folks, how can I advocate for you all and also help message? I also really enjoy spending a lot of time facilitating communication and leveraging of resources across departments on cross-cutting environmental sustainability and resilience projects. So some projects are really well suited for being, directly driven and executed by a specific department. But then there are also some activities that would really benefit from sort of getting out of potential silos and thinking across departments. And so that is something that I spend a lot of time doing, is making sure I'm connecting the dots between different staff and departments who may have an interest in similar activities or behaviors or opportunities. And so one example of a way I'm doing this right now is trying to really facilitate some collaboration across departments when thinking about how we can use infrastructure investment and Job Act funds. So there's going to be a lot of federal funding coming down the pipeline, and how can we be really strategic in terms of maximizing those funds across our different departments. I also play a pretty strong role in terms of leading the current mayoral administration's new environmental sustainability and resilience initiatives, or those that would require kind of benefit from centralized leadership across departments. And so one example of something that we recently announced and received funding for is an on-site solar feasibility assessment. So we'll be looking across Metro's kind of 600 sites and figuring out which of those may be really well suited for on-site solar installations, and kind of working through all of the pros and cons associated with that. And then also a lot of strategy setting for Metro environmental sustainability and resilience priorities. So how do we make sure that everyone's moving in the same direction, kind of towards similar targets, and helping provide, again, sort of that structure from an overarching government perspective. So that kind of covers sort of that Metro specific piece. The other sort of portion of my time is spent quite a bit working with the public on environmental sustainability and resilience issues. So there's obviously a lot of work that Metro can directly control, But then there's also a lot of work that we may not be able to directly control. And so making sure that I'm building relationships with external partners to further sustainability and resilience throughout the community is hugely important. Representing Metro in major community conversations or projects that touch on the topic of sustainability and resilience, serving as a spokesperson for us on environmental sustainability and resilience issues, really anything else that comes up in a day. So I know that's a little bit of a laundry list, and some days I spend more of my time sort of on the community focus side of things, and then other days I may be more focused kind of on the Metro government operations side of things. But I love that variety and just that I'm afforded the opportunity to work with all of those groups.
Yeah, I know for us too, for those of us that are Metro employees working in sustainability or areas of sustainability, it is so nice to have you as an advocate, have you as someone that, you know, we can go to and have those conversations and that coordination. Already in the short time that you've been here, you've shown me at least that you've been an incredible resource.
Thank
I've
you.
only
I
heard
appreciate
good things.
that.
So I'm always about, like, anytime we can all coordinate as one Metro government, I'm all about it. So really appreciate all of that work that you're doing. All right. So you kind of hinted at some of this. Can you talk a little bit about the work of the Mayor's Sustainability Advisory Committee? We did hear an episode last season. The committee has recommended a set, for those of you that are out there, if you didn't see that episode, we've got it. The link is in the chat. But we heard from Linda Bregan and Eric Kopstein, who are over that committee, are part of co-chairs of that committee. Anywho, they recommended a set of sustainability focused priorities for the city, and they're working towards, they talked about a climate action plan. Can you talk about those efforts, talk about that committee, where we are, what's happening next, and what's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I want to make sure I'm recognizing anyone who has served on that Sustainability Advisory Committee. Thank you for your work. It has been hugely impactful and I think very helpful for me in my role in terms of understanding kind of the current status of climate action work in Nashville, and then sort of where I can pick up and run with that and best lead sort of that ship moving forward. And so that Sustainability Advisory Committee in itself, again, it's a multidisciplinary group of about 60 plus, it's actually closer to, I would say, almost 80 at this point, sustainability experts in Nashville, that was formed in early 2020 to advise the mayor on sustainability issues. And so one of their first activities was development of recommendations for climate action. And the reason why they focused specifically on those activities was in 2019, we had signed on to the Global Covenant of Mayors, and sort of one of the requirements or sort of threshold activities associated with that is development and adoption of a climate action plan. And so what that resulted in was sort of a very robust subcommittee approach, where that committee divided into multiple subcommittees focused on 6 topics. And so those topics were energy, green buildings, mobility, natural resources, waste reduction, and adaptation. And those subcommittees did so much great work. Again, sort of benchmarking of peer best practices and what other cities and municipalities are doing, looking kind of historically at what's happened in Nashville and past planning efforts. And then obviously looking also at where we can sort of get the most bang for our buck from an emissions reductions perspective to try to meet, climate action goals. And so that resulted in a listing of actually over 290 individual strategies across those 6 topics. And then those were kind of distilled down into about 40 narrative bulleted policy focus and priority actions, again, with a specific focus on actions that would produce the greatest carbon reductions based on where we see them coming from today. So many of you may be aware that approximately every 3 years, we update our greenhouse gas emissions inventory that's headed up by Laurel Creech in our general services group and her great team. And so that information, and we can distribute that afterwards, is hugely foundational in terms of informing where we see, again, that greatest opportunity to have impact and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So within this report, again, consolidated into about 40 or so actions, and then also talked sort of about where we should be setting targets, how equity plays into those specific recommendations, where we may want to partner with various community leaders, and sort of other sort of just really, really strong considerations that need to accompany that work. And so those recommendations were presented to Mayor Cooper in January 2021. And since then, and particularly since coming into my role about four months ago, I have been working very closely with metro departments and kind of community leaders to figure out about 10 or 12 priority climate actions that we can move forward with over the next 2 to 3 years. And so that those actions haven't necessarily been released to the public yet. We're still very much discussing those and having serious conversations about resources available to execute and sort of who's best suited for executing various pieces. But that work is moving along really nicely, and it's going to set us up for success. I'll kind of note that when I use the term, when I talk about 10 to 12 priority climate actions, just because something is included as part of that short list doesn't mean it isn't going to happen or that it isn't important. It may be something that's being led specifically by a department, executed by an external partner, or something that, again, if we were able to, if the stars aligned and we had access to resources and sort of, technology that could help us quickly solve that problem, we may actually promote it and elevate it and kind of execute it. And so it's not intended to be kind of a rigid lock-in, we're only committed to these things. It's sort of meant to help focus our attention moving forward. And so that's kind of where we are in terms of taking action on that climate action plan. I think the other thing that's really important to note is that we've accomplished actually quite a bit since that group really started their efforts. So we've already got, a renewable energy standard for metro government operations. We're pursuing a utility scale solar energy array as part of TVA's Green Invest program. We've done a great job of installing solar sort of at certain metro facilities as part of new construction. We adopted and updated more efficient building code. We've established, an energy savings program and revolving fund for metro facilities. We've done a lot of work to protect tree canopy on public property in particular. And then sort of we've most recently taken more actions to kind of extend how Metro can help support tree canopy protection on private property, since that's not something we can directly control. We've also done really great work, and this very intimately, Jen, in terms of stepping up requirements for waste management plans from commercial and multifamily residential projects. And then also kind of requiring special events to have recycling and waste management plans as well, and increasing access to food waste drop-off containers at convenience centers. So I think there's a lot of great work that's already been accomplished that is very directly connected to recommendations that were included in that plan. And then again, we're going to see some pretty major activities moving forward.
That's great. It's always nice to hear all the things that are, we plan. Sometimes it feels like we're always just constantly planning and prioritizing. And so it's really great to distill down. No, we've accomplished all these things. These pieces are moving forward, but they do have to be prioritized. We do have to kind of figure out how do we get from A to B. But I love hearing all these things. I know we've got solar that is in process. I don't know if it's fully installed over here at the Metro Water Services Administrative Central Wastewater Treatment Plant building, but it's exciting to see that stuff go up.
Yes, literally, like out your window, you can.
Yeah. It's like right there as I drive
kind of like
in.
a mini solar farm out there.
There was a moment there were just a bunch of cages on the ground, and everyone thought
you
that
were
there was some other
happening.
problem. But then we realized it was the solar panels. So Anywho, well, I think you, with the, what did you say, 209 different strategies that were
over
outlined.
290. If you go back to the core
290.
spreadsheet, I mean, that's how incredible this group was, right? And how many different ideas they brought to the table. So I cannot emphasize how awesome their work and input was enough.
Wow. But, and with 290 strategies that, and as we've talked about on all of our many episodes, sustainability is not a simple thing. It is not one thing. It's a very broad and far-reaching topic and touches everything that we all do: transportation to green space, pollution, trees, you mentioned water, waste, all of the things, fashion. So with that all in mind, and you've kind of started touching on this, and also, of course, we have our zero waste master plan. There's a transportation plan. There's a Metro Parks plan. There's just so many different plans. And with so many of these different issues, with these different opportunities, as I like to think of this, that's 290 opportunities that we have. So what are those? Can you talk a little bit more about the top priorities for Nashville right now, beyond what you've already shared?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great sort of place to turn to, a logical place to turn to in this conversation. And so I think you hit the nail on the head, Jen. One of the challenges, but also opportunities in doing sustainability work is that it is highly interdisciplinary. And there's great opportunity to kind of put on sustainability goggles sometimes, as I like to say, and approach everyone's work with that, right? That's arguably a really effective approach. I think something I quickly realized when I first came into this role and was trying to spend my first few months just having conversations with people and just doing my own due diligence and research was that we've done a really, really good job of planning and coming up with ideas, and probably not as good of a job in executing those ideas as we could have. And so you noted that, we've got all of these different plans that touch on aspects of sustainability. And so something I realized is, well, gosh, we probably don't want to spend additional time planning. We've planned ourselves to death. Let's really focus on implementation and execution. So I share that kind of as an intro to, I think one thing I'm trying to do in my role is really keep us focused on taking action, as opposed to kind of getting in this do loop of trying to figure out what our best solutions need to be. And that's not to say that the existing foundational work that's been done, again, going back as far as Mayor Carl Dean's Green Ribbon Committee, Mayor Barry's Livable Nashville report, and then also, again, as I just spoke at length to Mayor Cooper's Sustainability Advisory Committee report, and the host of department-specific plans that you noted. Those are again really great and have set us a wonderful foundation. So with that, I'm happy to share with you a couple of those that we are more certain that we'll be able to kind of commit to and really, really move forward with. So one that was really exciting that again, I think is just an important sort of threshold requirement to set for ourselves was actual formal adoption of a metro government and community-wide target for greenhouse gas emissions reductions and regular progress tracking. And council actually adopted a resolution that formally put that into place last week. I was super excited. And prior to that point in time, I think that target had been a recommendation that had been issued, again, in various different reports. But this was the first time we made the leap as a city to say we are adopting this. We're going to, provide regular status updates on how we're doing and really work to this, again, 80% reduction by 2050 from 2014 levels, not just again from metro government operations, but also as a community, which is going to be tough to get. I know a lot of folks have asked the question to say, well, why not go carbon neutral? And I think there's nothing stopping us from getting there, but I agree. I think that we already have our work cut out for us in just trying to hit that 80%. And so that becomes really important because again, that can kind of be the guiding framework, within which we consider all of our other actions and one way we can measure progress. So that's, I think, a really, really exciting recent accomplishment that I'm proud of. we talked again at length kind of about the interdisciplinarity of sustainability and resilience work. And so one thing I'm spending a lot of time trying to do in working with different departmental leaders and other mayor's office staff is making sure that even if there's not a project that we're labeling as a sustainability project, we're trying to, again, infuse those sustainability considerations and resilience considerations across decision-making in departments. And again, that's not going to happen overnight. That's more of a cultural shift. But I think it's hugely important to kind of look at the co-benefits that sustainability can provide, and sort of how thinking about things a little bit more comprehensively can allow us to sort of provide multiple benefits to a community, as opposed to kind of solely focusing on, you know, what economic development benefits are coming from a project. We will also be launching an environmental indicators dashboard later this summer. And so kind of in the effort to be more accountable and transparent with how we measure progress, that will be kind of a collection of, at this point, we're probably close to 25 or 30 metrics that to varying extents represent environmental sustainability and resilience progress, as well as kind of status. And so we're still massaging what those data sets look like, and which ones we want to choose, which ones we think are most representative, which ones have kind of consistent data sources that we'll be able to track. But I'm really excited to get that up and running because, again, that provides a communication mechanism for us with the public. But then it also holds us accountable and allows us to really understand where we're making progress and perhaps maybe where we need to perform better. So that's an exciting addition to our portfolio that we'll be launching this summer. I quickly touched earlier on our 600 site solar feasibility assessment on metro properties. That is a huge undertaking. It's really the first time I think we've taken a comprehensive look at everything that Metro controls, and then sort of said, well, what does installation of solar power look like across that portfolio? It's way more complex than I think most of us realized, in that we're not only looking sort of at structural stability of a space, or whether or not sort of there's open space or roof space that's well suited for solar, but we're also having to think through things like, is that consistent with the intended use of the property, right? So we have a variety of open spaces, for example, that are intended for recreational use. While they may be great open spaces, because of how they're supposed to be used, they may not be well suited for installation of solar. And so trying to really prioritize, if we are going to move forward with installation of on-site solar, which of those are going to give us kind of the most bang for our buck. We're also spending a lot of time working through kind of the early stages of strategically planning out electric vehicle infrastructure and electrification of metro fleets. But then also identifying where kind of other alternative fuel approaches may also be well suited. So there are a couple of different fleets within Metro government. We have our general services fleet, which is a combination of light duty and heavy duty vehicles. They are doing, again, quite a bit of work looking at electrification in particular. But then we also have some larger kind of specialized fleets, like our school bus fleet that is operated by Metro Nashville Public Schools, as well as our transit fleet operated by WeGo MTA. And so figuring out how we can look at alternative fuel options that have lesser environmental impacts, but still really promote operational efficiency and reliability is really, really important. This is one of those areas where there's a lot of funding available at the federal level, or that will be available at the federal level. So trying to kind of harness those funds to help really jumpstart those fleet transitions is really important. And then there's also a lot of work that that Metro will be engaging in partnership with Nashville Electric Services, as well as the private sector, to figure out what role we're playing to facilitate access to publicly available electric vehicle infrastructure. So this is one area that, you know, we frequently think about governments being on the cutting edge of piloting new technologies or enabling adoption, or uptake of new technologies. And again, that's one that we'll be closely looking at from a Metro government perspective and helping to think through how we can, again, sort of facilitate and compel change. We are also seriously considering rollout of an energy savings and public reporting program for large buildings. That is a project that we have not officially kicked off yet. And we know that there are a lot of really, really careful and thoughtful decisions we need to make in terms of designing that program and trying to strike an appropriate balance between being a burden for facilities, but then also sort of trying to make information about energy consumption more available to the public. And so that will be a project that we tackle, I think, in close partnership with affected parties so that they can come to the table and help us craft and design what that program looks like, rather than feeling like they're having to react to a program that we designed without their input. So that work will probably kick off early next year. We're also working with NES on LED streetlight conversion. So the vast majority, if not all, of streetlights across Nashville and Davidson County are right now high pressure sodium. And there's a much more environmentally friendly and efficient alternative out there. And so developing a plan in partnership with them to make that conversion happen is something we're working on. We're also taking a look at kind of long-term what stormwater management strategies and low impact development looks like. So most of us have seen that there's been rapid development that's occurred really across the entire county. And then we're also seeing, flash flooding events and increased sort of rainfall events. And so figuring out a longer term strategy for more effectively managing those events and water, stormwater runoff is something that I'll be working on really closely with Metro Water Services. We are also planning, again, probably in 2023, later in 2023, to develop and roll out an environmental equity and inclusion strategy. We'll also be piloting several resilience hubs across the county. That is one that is very much early in its infancy right now. We're still trying to shape and figure out what those resilience hubs look like, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to make sure we're customizing those to specific community needs. Also looking at sort of more strategic long-term approaches to acquisition and maintenance of green space is hugely important. Not only from ensuring that we have access to that green space, but also as we think about where we can expand those opportunities and again, make sure they're cared for over the long term is hugely important. And then also in the solid waste world, looking at sort of longer term strategies for regional solid waste management and diversion. So I think for folks who have been in Nashville for quite some time, and kind of run in solid waste and recycling circles. Folks are well aware that we have some challenges in our future with sort of long-term disposition of solid waste management and recycling. And so coming together with surrounding counties to kind of develop some solutions that can benefit all of us and reduce environmental impacts and cost impacts in the process is definitely going to be a focus area. The zero waste team is getting ready to pilot residential compost collection some point this next year, and then hopeful expansion of monthly curbside recycling as well. So that's kind of a laundry list of some of the things we'll really be focusing on over the next 2 to 3 years. Not exhaustive, but the ones that I think folks may be most interested in.
Oh my gosh, it's so much stuff, but it's so exciting.
Yes, it's a lot. It is a lot. It's going to take a lot of hard work. But I think we've got really great folks across Metro working on this, and then great partners in the community to sort of help steer us and tell us where we're veering off course. So
yeah. Oh, incredible. So which one of these projects are you most excited about?
Oh my gosh, that's really tough. It's almost like asking me if I have a favorite child. That's not fair. But I will tell you 3 that I personally am kind of passionate about, just because I think they're for various different reasons. I'm really excited about our environmental indicators dashboard, in large part because I think it'll be our first real effort to increase Metro's transparency and accountability on sustainability and resilience topics, and to educate the public on kind of how we're doing. I think, again, having a clearinghouse for information like that is hugely important. And again, I don't think we do a very good job of sharing that information today. So that's one. I'm super excited about the Resilience Hubs pilot. So the topic of resilience has kind of always been a personal passion area of mine. And I'm really excited to pilot this on a project scale, in large part because I think it brings in so many benefits, right? So it's going to bring in environmental kind of risk management, disaster response, social services, financial benefits, all really for a very specific community area. And so I see it as a really innovative way to flexibly solve challenges at a hyperlocal level. So I'm really excited to see how that works out and if it's going to be sort of a scalable model. And then the last one I'll kind of touch on that I'm really excited about is, again, more innovative stormwater management and low impact development strategies. Flooding and stormwater management are such important topics to our community. And I think there's just a great way to rethink how we manage them and how we can set our city up for success moving forward. So, but I'm excited about all of them.
Well, I personally am super excited about the dashboard myself. When I first heard you mention about it, I was like, this is going to be great to, that's one thing.
Yes, Jen will be providing us information on a regular
I know, I was
basis
making a
for this
note of the
dashboard.
things I need to get to you. But it's one of the reasons why we partnered with Urban Green Lab to do this program, is to just get more of this information out there. So anything that we can share with the public to show things are happening, we're doing things, but I love the accountability piece as well. Now you did mention in your many things that are going on a little bit about environmental justice. Can you talk a little bit more about how equity intersects with the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so again, I feel like I'm sort of beating the same drum here a couple of times. So, again, I see environmental sustainability and resilience work as so interdisciplinary. And, we talk, everyone sort of has that image of either the Venn diagram or the three-legged stool of sustainability, and talks about sort of how really that's the concept of bringing together environment, economics, and social impacts, and kind of throwing it all in a pot and trying to maximize beneficial outcomes or minimize detrimental impacts. And so, that's so common in all of these projects and problems that we're trying to solve. I think what we also see is as cities grow and change, sometimes the burdens are sort of, again, the impacts associated with those changes, unfortunately fall disproportionately on certain groups and populations. And so working to do everything we can to acknowledge or identify, but then B, kind of eliminate those disproportionate burdens is really important. And so I think there's a great opportunity in each of the projects I noted to make sure that, again, we're having that equity lens and running everything kind of through an equity filter as part of that work. And again, that's really the crux of the concept of kind of environmental justice and equity movements, is there's this element of solving social problems that can come with solving environmental problems. And so again, really collaborating with other focus areas and highlighting the different public health, agricultural, transportation, affordable housing, workforce development, so on and so forth, all of the different benefits that can come from a solution that also targets, again, sort of an environmental challenge is really helpful and can amplify the impacts and co-benefits received from our work. So as that specifically relates to the environmental equity and inclusion strategy, again, that's a project that's slated for probably 2023. So, specifics associated with what that strategy looks like and kind of exactly what its scope is going to tackle remain to be determined. But I'm excited that we'll be focusing on that moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. To have some kind of strategy to look at to help guide all of the projects that we're all doing to really have that lens, it's going to be incredible. And I'm just so glad that it's, being more incorporated into what we're all trying to do. I know it's part of our zero waste master plan, but
Yep.
Certainly between us and Urban Green Lab, a really important piece to sustainability and everything that we do, especially as metro government. So that's great. We've got a couple more quick questions and then we're going to get to your audience questions. So I do see the chat kind of flying by in the corner of my eye. So we're definitely going to save time for y'all's questions.
Only the easy questions.
Just,
hint, nudge, nudge, Christina.
So the talking about our audience, how can they get involved? You talked about the dashboard, but how can they learn more about what Nashville is doing right now to support the sustainability efforts that you and we all are doing and other city leaders are working on?
Yeah, so I think definitely making information about sustainability activities more accessible is something I'm focused on. I think it's going to end up resulting in some increased presence via website. But something I want to keep this group focused on is, again, partnerships. I think you've heard me mention this, Jen. Obviously, this is a partnership. This series is a partnership between Urban Green Lab and the Zero Waste team. We can't do this alone. I mean, you heard me talk about a lot of things that we're planning on leading or really jumpstarting, but it's going to take support from our residents, the private sector, nonprofits, and other critical stakeholders across our community to actually make this work happen. We don't have unlimited resources. I wish we did. And so leveraging, all of those important groups and partners as extensions of ourselves is a way that we can do more with less, and we're going to have to do it that way. And so I think thinking through where you may be part of an organization or part of a neighborhood that can chip in or kind of do your part, I think is a huge win for us as well as the community. I think also speaking up and advocating for the changes that you think you need to see in Nashville is really helpful. Folks may have differing perspectives on this or differing experiences with this, but I know that something I really take to heart is, again, feedback that's provided by our constituents and by communities. I'm only one person. I can typically only be in one place at one time. Occasionally, maybe I can call into 2 meetings and be at 2 places at the same time, but typically I'm only one place one time. And so, you guys can be our eyes and ears on the ground and let us know what's happening in your community from a sustainability perspective and sort of where we need to be focusing our time. I'd be remiss if I didn't put a plug in for a future climate action plan engagement survey that we will be releasing in partnership with the Civic Design Center probably next month. We're still kind of shoring up, getting that ready. But that is actually going to be a great opportunity for the public to weigh in on kind of those 40 core set. It's actually, we've whittled it down a little bit, but about, I would say 25 to 30 actions and let us know kind of which of those we need to be, again, making sure are on our plate in the near future. And so I think that's one very tangible kind of call to action that I'd love to leave this group with. We also talked, like you said, Jen, a little bit about the environmental indicators dashboard. I think there's an opportunity for each of you to be an ambassador and communicator of the work that's ongoing. That doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything that we're doing, but if you are aware of something and think it's important to share sort of with your networks, please do that. And again, that directly connects back to making sure you're letting us know where we need to be spending our time and where we may need to advocate for more resources to accomplish our work. So I think those are a couple of things that we can directly get this group plugged into.
That's great. And as those things come out, there'll be links that we can share with our audience so we can directly email everybody. So you've been on this call, or on this live stream. So we've got your email address if you put it in when you registered. So we will make sure that everybody gets that as those things roll out. So that'll be great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. And lastly, I know we also often get a lot of younger folks, some students out there. Do you, people that are younger in their career, early in their career? And so just curious, what advice would you have for those that are interested in getting involved in government sustainability work?
Oh, that's a good one. So I think a couple of things. One is just be a sponge. Again, due to how multidisciplinary sustainability and resilience work is, there, I would hazard to state that there is not sort of a real world problem that you may encounter that doesn't have a sustainability tie. And so I think thinking through again, kind of how all of these, a lot of the big complex problems that we deal with today in government, right? But as a society at large, have interesting sustainability threads and themes. And so thinking about how, again, you may be able to use sustainability to kind of get your foot in the door or potentially solve at least one aspect of some of those complex problems, I think is just a good habit to get into. I would also say be really strategic and innovative when, trying to think through problems and then solutions that can solve those problems. And one thing I've really learned working in government, both at the local level as well as at the state level, and then interacting on sort of federal government policies as well, is that, by not being super narrow in your perspective, you can actually reach a broader audience by speaking again to kind of the co-benefits that can come from your sustainability work and project, and perhaps find more traction for your work. And so how you have those conversations and advocate for change may be really different depending on the audience you're speaking with, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that if you're talking more significantly about the financial benefits of a sustainability project with, your chief operations officer, it doesn't mean that you're not doing your job. You're actually doing a really good job of convincing somebody why they need to make a certain change, and that's okay. So be really kind of strategic in terms of how you kind of work and gain support for your solutions. I think something else that has been really important to me, and I have to remind myself of this every day, is I can't expect to see change overnight. We didn't create environmental impacts overnight. We can't expect them to go away immediately. And so moving the needle and really in a significant way takes time. And so just to kind of keep that perspective in mind as you do work in sort of the government sector in particular. It is not a quickly moving beast. And it probably never will be, and for good reason, right? And so that can get frustrating, but just kind of reminding yourself that it is going to take time is helpful. And then I also think it's important to, again, really celebrate your successes, even the small wins. I had like a super tiny small win yesterday, but I was still really excited about it. It is really minuscule in the grand scheme of things, but I needed to celebrate that in that day, because then there was a chain or series of reactions or decisions after that it opened up that we may not have had otherwise. And so I think, again, a lot of the challenges we face today, think about just the concept of climate change, right? These are huge elephants. And so we're not going to make progress any way other than kind of slowly chipping away at those challenges. And hopefully at some point we will build momentum over time that then sort of opens up the floodgates to making more rapid progress. So just taking a moment though to celebrate the quick wins that you may have, I think is important to staying focused and also staying in this work without getting discouraged.
Yeah, great advice. And I feel like I've got so many more questions, but we are going to hold those because I want to make sure we get to our audience questions. We're going to bring Christina back.
Hopefully I gave Christina enough time to weed out the difficult ones.
There you go.
I'm just kidding.
I only took the difficult ones. No, I tried to get all of them. If I missed anybody's, I apologize. Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much, Kendra. This has been great. I have been a little bit distracted with the chat. Y'all are talking a bunch in there. You're talking about some great stuff. And so we will hopefully be able to get your take on some of these questions. They might be somewhat repeated from what you've said, because I didn't have a chance to kind of totally go through them, but you can just give like a quick synopsis if you've already
Totally.
hit on it. Great. So I tried to lump them into kind of categories as much as I could, but it's also just going to be a little scattershot. So thank you everyone for your questions. So Ed was wondering that 290 list of recommendations, is that listed anywhere publicly?
Yeah, that is actually, it is in a PDF version, and this will be one of the links that I share with you afterwards, Christina. It is actually as an attachment or kind of an appendix, basically, on the Sustainability Advisory Committee's Climate Action Report. So if you go all the way kind of to the end of that, you'll see it's again in PDF version, but it's formatted kind of as a spreadsheet. And so that extensive list is included within that PDF portfolio. So I'll make sure we send that link out afterwards.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much. And there was a couple of follow-up questions. We had some from Anne and George and Diane about kind of like the specifics of that list. So of course, we don't want to kind of like go through every single thing, but maybe we can do a little bit rapid fire. Is there something in there for bird safe buildings? You know? This might be just like a test of your knowledge.
Off the top of my head, I don't believe we have something for bird safe buildings specifically, but we do very much try to look at, again, how built environment can interact and be supportive of natural resources as opposed to taking away from those. But again, off the top of my head, I don't require something very specific, or I don't remember there being a specific bird safe recommendation there.
Okay, great. Well, maybe that's someone needs to go to a listening session and talk about bird safety. As we have the street light conversion is developed, can comprehensive dark sky considerations be introduced regarding light pollution? So is there anything with light pollution in there?
So that is, I think, I spend a lot of time talking about co-benefits associated with different sustainability projects. And I think looking at light pollution and the benefits that LED conversion will actually have for light pollution issues is a huge win-win. And so I think when that conversion occurs, we will see light pollution go down, which will again sort of help us with those dark sky priorities. So I think we'll definitely see that come out when we do make that conversion happen.
Awesome. That sounds great. And then we have a question from Diane where, is there anything specific for public housing in that list of recommendations?
There is quite a bit of conversation that looks at, so I would say we touch on public housing in two ways in that report and the recommendations. Almost three ways, actually, now that I think about it. One is we talk a little bit about extending kind of green building requirements throughout, again, all of metro portfolios. Right now, our requirements actually only apply to metro general government, and some of our affordable housing work occurs outside of metro general government. But they do a really great job of really focusing on opportunities to promote high performance building within their grant recipients, as well as kind of new construction of buildings. I think we also touch quite a bit on just concepts of accessibility and equity relating to community development and planning of transit systems. And so making sure that as we're planning our communities and planning our transportation infrastructure, that we're thinking again about connecting potential users of affordable housing to kind of those services, and making sure again they're extended the benefits, whether they be environmental, social, financial, that come from kind of more strategic approaches to planning is really important. And then there are recommendations surrounding, again, pursuing kind of an environmental justice and environmental equity strategy. And again, I think based on sort of how affordable housing is designed, that will naturally come up in those conversations when we tackle those. So those are kind of the three ways that affordable housing is folded in to some of those recommendations.
Wonderful. Thank you. That was a very robust answer. I appreciate that. So Thomas was asking kind of similarly, is there any outreach that y'all are doing to neighborhood associations?
So I mentioned the climate action plan survey that we're getting to roll out with the Civic Design Center. We have on our list. So right now we're sort of not only formalizing that strategy, but also sort of our communications and outreach approach to try to make sure, again, we get a really diverse and representative, cohort of respondents. And so one of the things we've actually identified as a strategy for making sure we get the word out there is actually working through neighborhood associations to actually help promote and distribute that survey. And so that will be coming. Again, I think my first approach is kind of to work with our different mayor's office units that actually have those already developed connections with neighborhood associations, and then also council members and beautification commissioners to make sure we're kind of blanketing all of those different target areas. But if there's specific suggestions about how to best reach neighborhood associations, we'd definitely be open to that.
Awesome. And Ursula was asking if you guys interact at all with the Metro Human Relations Commission or staff with regards to housing and food issues and how they may intersect with sustainability efforts. So Ursula kind of went on to talk about having the dual purpose of reducing hunger and helping alleviate food insecurity and those green spaces and food. So lots of things to talk about there, but maybe if you want to talk about how your work intersects with that. And then Michael also mentioned something about, does food waste and healthy food availability, neighborhood gardens and food deserts factor into the mayor's sustainability plan? So kind of similar question.
Yeah. So kind of on the first one, and have we worked with specific offices? I have just now started kind of trying to build stronger relationships with some of our more social service focused organizations. And so I think there's more to come there, and that's definitely something that we're interested in. Again, kind of looking at food deserts, food security, and security is again a huge part of sustainability and resilience and building healthy communities. And so we'll definitely be focused on that in the future. And again, I think one of the things I'm still learning is the landscape of Metro departments and sort of arms and units and boards and commissions who have ties to these topics and potentially may have an interest. So there's opportunity for me to build better partnerships there. I think as it relates to food waste in particular, yes, focusing on reducing food waste is a huge priority for us. It's been a huge priority for our partners, including Urban Green Lab and sort of their operation of the Nashville Food Waste Initiative. And so it will continue to be moving forward. I think we've done a lot of really, really great work in terms of, looking at education and outreach, we being Metro and its partners, looking at kind of food waste education and outreach and promoting resources that help businesses, residents, individuals better understand their opportunities through source reduction strategies or through donation and composting, eliminate food waste. I think the next sort of big project that we're going to see in this area is, again, piloting residential compost collection. So that is one big one that's coming down the pipeline. I think also kind of reinvigorating relationships with sort of commercial businesses that generate food waste, and again, working strategically with them to prevent those organic waste from getting in the landfill is a huge focus as well. And so those things did come out as recommendations in the Sustainability Advisory Committee's report and are still going to be focus areas moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so these next kind of batch of questions, and I want to be mindful of our time, so I'm kind of going to put these together, is basically about the backup of garbage services and kind of recycling services. And I'm sure that's your favorite thing to talk about. So I just wanted to see if you wanted to kind of talk about that. Basically, a couple of folks were asking, is there a plan for when Middle Point closes in Rutherford County? Are we doing anything to actually reduce and create less garbage? And then also, if there's anything with a statewide deposit on single-use beverage containers. So basically kind of a wide swath for you to talk about waste.
Yeah. So I think first thing I want to make sure I acknowledge is that we hear frustrations, concerns, and are equally as frustrated and concerned about kind of the current solid waste vendor collection issues and disposal issues. I think we recognize how much of an inconvenience that is, and that there's obviously it's very disappointing, and there's opportunity to improve. And so there are numerous folks internal to the mayor's office, as well as within Metro Water and Waste Services, dedicating a ton of effort on obviously making sure that we're getting the performance that we're obligated to receive out of our existing contracts, and then pursuing some temporary kind of stopgap measures to make sure that we're minimizing the inconvenience on residents and some businesses. And so I just want to acknowledge that we are hearing that, and we're doing everything we possibly can to accelerate improvements. In terms of sort of longer term strategy for solid waste management, both kind of from a collection and aggregation perspective, as well as long-term disposition and sort of where it's going. Yes, so one of the things I mentioned being on that short list of priorities is looking again, not only at what we can do from sort of a collection standpoint, and education standpoint, and programming standpoint, to make sure we're increasing what we offer to residents that can support waste diversion and recycling opportunities or composting opportunities. So I spoke about a couple of different things that we're tackling there, but then we're also, again, as I noted, in longer term, more strategic conversations with counties such as Rutherford County, Williamson County, other counties who are very much in the same position as Nashville, who are highly interested in looking at longer term regional solutions to better managing different waste streams. And that very much includes, more comprehensive recycling strategies and diversion strategies. And so those conversations are ongoing. Those are definitely, again, issues that aren't going to be solved overnight, and there's not going to be one silver bullet. So it's going to probably end up being a combination of different strategies and technologies that help get us there. And there may be some transition strategies as well, or sort of bridge strategies that may not be where we want to be or where we want to end up, but sort of help get us to our end goal later on. So definitely more to come on that. It is definitely a priority for us moving forward. As it relates to bottle bills, every year, I think there's at least one bottle bill introduced at the state level. I unfortunately have not tracked nearly as closely this year what the status of that is. Most years they kind of closely resemble, but may have slight tweaks. And it has always been one that I think has been obviously had a lot of advocates for it, but then also a lot of opposers as well. And so I know that that's of continued interest to local governments as well as kind of the private sector in terms of figuring out how to move forward with those.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. And I know that was kind of lots of questions in one, so I appreciate the candid answer. Don was asking, and you kind of mentioned this, so you might want to just kind of say it quickly, the work that you do with water services. Can you talk about that really quickly?
Yeah, so to date, a lot of the work has really been focused on Metro Water Services approach to stormwater management in the areas where they have responsibility, as well as tree canopy restoration and maintenance. And then a little bit of conversation with them about their intended use of American Rescue Plan funds. And so that is where the bulk of the water infrastructure focused conversations have been to date. Also working with them on our on-site solar feasibility assessment. And then also, most of you probably know now that Metro Water Services also includes Metro Waste Services. So any of the waste related responsibilities that I am involved in or engaged in are also technically working through Metro Water Services. So to give a little bit more detail on kind of stormwater master planning, there is a contract that Metro Water Services will be entering into with a consultant to help us through that work. And so again, that's largely in its infancy and will unfold over the next few years.
Great, great. And you mentioned trees, which was actually
Mhm.
something that also came up a few times in the chat. And so, you know, Jennifer was asking, you know, can the city pass tree ordinances that affect private property? She's heard it works in other cities. And then Hans Willie said, what role does the mayor's office play in speeding up the tree ordinance under discussion, and how strict will trees on private properties be protected?
So I think short answer is yes, there are different things that can occur via ordinance that can dictate or influence how trees are managed on private properties. There are several ordinances that are that have been introduced by various council members, and we're working closely with those council members, as well as with our planning department, our codes folks, Metro Water Services, as well as Parks and Rec, to understand again sort of what those ordinances are proposing, and sort of how closely they align with what we think needs to happen in Nashville. And so we are very engaged in that work. There are various pros and cons with the packages that are being introduced. And so we're working very closely with those sponsors to again, try to find something that we think is reasonable, but also still beneficial, and moving us in the right direction.
Great. And so this is kind of a follow-up question. We have Kim asking, is your focus primarily on the residential side of facilitating more sustainable practices, or is it more focused on making the government, specifically their operations, more sustainable? Or maybe it's all of the above?
I would say it's both. It's both. You know, I spend probably right now, I would say about 40% of my time working on Metro government operations and programs and services, probably another 40% of my time working with the community more generally. But within the community, that's working with kind of both businesses in the private sector and kind of more commercial and industrial operations, as well as kind of residential conversations. So a little bit of everything.
Great. Yeah, I see kind of a microcosm of the city. You're there, you're talking about it. I love it. Again, kind of similarly, folks were asking about, does the city require new or redeveloped properties to be LEED certified, and or are you all looking into requirements for net zero for redesigns or remodels?
So right now for non-metro, non-government owned projects or buildings, we don't require that. We do have requirements in place for Metro general government, new construction and kind of redevelopment. But again, for anything that is not Metro owned or executed, we don't have those requirements in place. I think we are true advocates of green building generally, and building to kind of different standards and certifications and high performance buildings. I think we recognize that not everyone may have the resources available to actually work through a certification process. And so again, making sure you're infusing those concepts is hugely important. In terms of a net zero requirement, we have not specifically discussed that to date, but something I did reference earlier was talk about putting forth a large building benchmarking and kind of energy performance program. And so I think one way to get us closer to net zero is, first of all, just requiring those buildings or encouraging those buildings to report energy consumption and emissions information to us. And then that can help us better inform really kind of thoughtful decisions as to how we can further compel them to reduce their environmental impact. So I think that is the kind of work that, again, it's not directly putting in place a net zero requirement, but can allow us to target change within a very similar area.
Wonderful, wonderful, thank you. So Kim was asking, and this might be a little too specific for you, but do you know if that we're seeing any reduction in trips as more companies now employ work from home, at least part-time, if you've noticed that at all in any trends?
So there is actually really great data that GNRC, which technically serves the Greater Nashville Regional Council, which technically serves as the kind of regions, the Middle Tennessee Regions Metropolitan Planning Organization. They're collecting kind of on different traffic and travel patterns. Most of that data is a little bit delayed in terms of when it's released. And so I don't think we have good solid data from kind of that COVID impact period. I think we're all anticipating that we will see sort of reduced single occupancy vehicle miles traveled, but I don't know if we have firm data to really provide conclusive evidence on that, but we're expecting that for sure.
Great. And so we are just about at time. We got to almost all of the questions. So Jen, I think we're going to have to close the door on the questions to respect everyone's time, and especially to respect Kendra's time for being here with us today and to sharing so much information and so much great work that you all are doing at the city level. It's really inspiring to see.
Thank you. I'm happy to share it. Like I said, we have our work cut out for us. There's a lot of work to do and we need your help. So.
Well, thank you so much, Kendra. I think for all of you out there, as always, this is recorded, so we will get that up on YouTube. Christina's going to share the follow-up email. If you've got burning questions that you really needed answered, reply to that email. We'll do our best to get that directed to where it needs to go and try and get your questions answered. And we will also get you the registration link in that follow-up email to our next episode. So next month, we're going to be talking about sustainable investing. About how you can invest in sustainability and all of that. It's a work in progress. It's going to be a great episode, though. We've got some really great speakers lined up to talk about sustainable investing. So do join us for that. And with that, we are 1 minute over, so we will sign off. And Kendra, thank you so much again. This was incredible.
No, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.